the greatest silver strike in American history. Welcome to this exploration of The Big Bonanza by Dan De Quille, published in 1876. This remarkable work chronicles the Comstock Lode, the richest silver deposit ever discovered in the United States, located beneath Virginia City, Nevada. Unlike fictional treasure tales, this is the true story of unimaginable wealth pulled from the earth, of men who became millionaires overnight, and of a mining boom that helped finance the Union during the Civil War. Dan De Quille, whose real name was William Wright, was a journalist for the legendary Territorial Enterprise newspaper in Virginia City. He witnessed the entire Bonanza era firsthand, worked alongside Mark Twain, and had unprecedented access to the mines, the miners, and the millionaires. His book combines rigorous reporting with vivid storytelling, technical mining details with human drama, creating an invaluable historical record of one of America's most extraordinary economic events. The Comstock Lode wasn't gold, it was primarily silver, though it contained significant gold as well. The discovery transformed Nevada from empty desert into a booming territory, created instant millionaires known as the Bonanza Kings, and produced wealth that influenced national politics and economics for decades. The discovery. How it all began, Story begins in 1859 in the barren mountains of western Nevada, then part of Utah Territory. Gold prospectors had been working the area since 1850, finding small amounts of placer gold in streams. But they were frustrated by a heavy blue-black mud that clogged their equipment and made gold extraction difficult. They cursed this blasted blue stuff as worthless nuisance. The prospectors didn't realize they were literally throwing away fortunes. That blue mud was silver ore, incredibly rich silver ore mixed with gold. It took an assayer to recognize what they had. The key figures in the discovery were Henry Comstock, a talkative prospector who gave his name to the lode despite minimal actual contribution, Old Pancake Comstock, Peter O'Reilly, and Patrick McLaughlin. These men were working a claim on Sun Mountain when they struck the first significant ore body. When samples were finally assayed properly, the results were staggering. Thousands of dollars worth of silver and gold per ton of ore. In an era when a working man earned perhaps $500 per year, individual claims were producing that much wealth per day, sometimes per hour. News spread rapidly. Within months, thousands of prospectors, speculators, merchants, and adventurers descended on the area. Virginia City erupted from nothing into a major settlement almost overnight. The rush was on. Virginia City, from desert to metropolis, De Quille provides extraordinary detail about Virginia City's explosive growth. In 1859, the site was empty desert. By 1860, it was a thriving camp. By the mid-1860s, it had become one of the largest and wealthiest cities in the American West. With a population exceeding 25,000, the city was built on the side of Mount Davidson at an elevation of over 6,000 feet. The terrain was harsh, no trees, little water, extreme temperatures. Everything had to be imported. Lumber from the Sierra Nevada forests, water piped from distant sources, food from California farms. The cost of living was astronomical, but so were the wages for skilled miners and the profits for successful businessmen. De Quille describes Virginia City's unique character. It was a place of extremes, immense wealth alongside grinding poverty, elegant opera houses next to rough saloons, sophisticated mining technology coexisting with frontier violence. The city had newspapers, including the famous Territorial Enterprise, theaters, churches, schools, and all the institutions of civilization, yet it maintained the wild energy of a mining camp. The social structure was complex. At the top were the mine owners and major stockholders, men who would become the Bonanza Kings. Below them were the skilled miners, engineers, and technicians who actually extracted the ore. Then came merchants, saloon keepers, professionals, and service workers. At the bottom were the unskilled laborers, Chinese workers, who faced severe discrimination, and the desperately poor. Virginia City was also remarkably diverse for its era. People came from around the world, Americans from every state, Irish immigrants, Germans, Cornish miners, called Cousin Jacks, French, Italians, Chinese, and others. This created a cosmopolitan atmosphere unusual for a frontier town. The geology and mining technology. 1. Of the Big Bonanza's most valuable aspects is De Quille's detailed description of Comstock mining technology. He explains complex engineering in accessible language, helping readers understand both the challenges and innovations of deep rock mining. The Comstock Lode was not surface ore. It ran deep underground in vertical veins. Mining it required tunneling hundreds, eventually thousands of feet into the mountain. This created enormous technical challenges. The first major problem was heat. As shafts went deeper, temperatures soared. At depths of 1,000 feet or more, the rock temperature could exceed 130 degrees. Miners worked in hellish conditions, often naked due to the heat, drinking vast quantities of water, working short shifts because longer exposure could be fatal. De Quille describes the ventilation systems developed to combat the heat, massive blowers forcing cool air down into the mines, creating artificial underground climates that made work possible. This was cutting-edge technology for the era. The second major challenge was water. Underground rivers flooded the mines constantly. Enormous pumping systems were required, steam-powered pumps working continuously to remove thousands of gallons per minute. When pumps failed, mines flooded rapidly, potentially trapping miners or destroying months of work. The third challenge was the ore itself. Comstock ore was incredibly hard. Drilling through solid rock required specialized tools and techniques. De Quille explains the drilling methods: hand drilling with hammers and steel drills, back-breaking slow work, and later, compressed air drilling machines that revolutionized the industry, supporting the tunnels and stopes. The excavated chambers where ore was removed required sophisticated timbering. The Comstock mines used more lumber than entire cities. Vast forests were clear-cut to provide the timbers that prevented cave-ins. De Quille describes the square-set timbering method developed, specifically for Comstock conditions, an ingenious system of interlocking timber frames that could support enormous weight and be extended infinitely, the ore bodies. Following the silver, the Comstock Lode wasn't uniform. It consisted of multiple ore bodies of varying richness, separated by barren rock. Finding and following these ore bodies was part science, part art, and part luck. De Quille explains how ore bodies would be rich beyond imagination in one location, then pinch out to nothing just feet away. Mines that were producing fortunes could suddenly hit barren ground, bankrupting investors. Conversely, mines thought to be exhausted would suddenly strike new bonanzas, making fortunes again. This unpredictability created wild speculation. Comstock mining stocks traded frantically in San Francisco. Rumors of new strikes or ore body failures could make or destroy fortunes in hours. Speculators manipulated information, spreading false reports to drive stock prices up or down for profit. The biggest ore bodies had names that became legendary: the California, the Consolidated Virginia, the Con Virginia, the Ophir, the Gould and Curry. Each had its own history of discovery, development, wealth, and often decline. The greatest discovery of all was the Big Bonanza itself. The massive ore body found by the Consolidated Virginia and California mines in 1873. This was the richest strike in Comstock history, producing tens of millions of dollars in silver and gold. It made the Bonanza Kings, James Fair, John Mackay, James Flood, and William O'Brien, among the wealthiest men in America. The Bonanza Kings. From rags to unimaginable riches, De Quille provides fascinating portraits of the men who struck it richest on the Comstock. These weren't born aristocrats or educated elites. They were working men who combined skill, timing, courage, and luck to achieve extraordinary success. John Mackay was an Irish immigrant who started as a common miner. He was tough, skilled, and respected by working miners even after becoming a millionaire. Mackay had an instinct for ore. He seemed to know where to dig. He was also unusual among Comstock millionaires for his relative modesty and fairness to workers. James Fair was also Irish, brilliant at mining engineering but ruthless in business. He was a master of mine management and stock manipulation. Fair was less liked than Mackay, but equally effective at accumulating wealth. James Flood and William O'Brien were San Francisco saloon keepers who partnered with Fair and Mackay. They handled the business and financial aspects, while Fair and Mackay managed the mining operations. This partnership, combining mining expertise with financial acumen, proved extraordinarily successful. Together, these four men formed the firm that controlled the consolidated Virginia and California mines. When they struck the Big Bonanza in 1873, they became spectacularly wealthy. Their combined fortune was estimated at over $100 million, billions in today's currency. De Quille also chronicles earlier Comstock millionaires like William Sharon, who controlled the Bank of California's Nevada operations and used his financial power to dominate the Comstock for years until the Bonanza Kings challenged him. These wealth stories weren't always happy. Many men made millions and lost them through bad investments, extravagant living, or new mining failures. Some, like Mackay, kept and grew their fortunes. Others died broke despite once being incredibly rich. The Comstock was as effective at destroying fortunes as creating them. Mining life. The human cost. While celebrating the wealth, De Quille doesn't ignore the brutal reality of mining life. Comstock miners were well paid by the standards of their era, typically $4 per day when farm workers earned $1. But they earned every cent. Mining was extraordinarily dangerous. Cave-ins killed or maimed men regularly. Fire underground could trap miners with no escape. Explosions from blasting accidents were common. The heat caused heat exhaustion and death. Silicosis from breathing rock dust slowly destroyed miners' lungs over years. De Quille describes specific accidents with sobering detail. The Yellow Jacket fire of 1869 killed 45 men. Trapped underground as fire consumed the oxygen, they suffocated or were burned alive. Such disasters were regular occurrences, accepted as the price of extracting the wealth. The work itself was brutal. Miners descended hundreds of feet in rickety cages, worked in extreme heat and dangerous conditions, handled explosives daily, and breathed toxic dust. Many worked until their bodies broke down, then died young from occupational diseases or accidents. Yet miners took pride in their work and their skills. They developed strong camaraderie, unions to protect their interests, and a distinct culture. Cornish miners brought mining songs and traditions. Irish miners brought their own cultural practices. This created a rich working-class culture that contrasted with the wealth above ground. De Quille, who knew many miners personally, treats them with respect and dignity, recording their stories and acknowledging their essential role in creating the Comstock's wealth. The ore processing, mills and metallurgy extracting ore from the ground was only the first step. The ore then had to be processed to separate the valuable silver and gold from the waste rock. De Quille provides detailed explanations of the milling process. Ore was crushed to powder, then processed using various chemical and mechanical methods. The main technique was the washoe process, a method using mercury amalgamation to extract the precious metals. The mills themselves were enormous industrial complexes powered by steam engines. They crushed thousands of tons of ore daily, using massive stamps that pounded the rock into fine powder. The noise was deafening, the dust choking. Like the mines, mills were dangerous workplaces where accidents were common. The processed ore yielded silver bullion, heavy bars of nearly pure silver, and gold. These were shipped to San Francisco and then to markets worldwide. The volume was staggering, millions of dollars worth of precious metals flowing steadily from Nevada to the world economy. De Quille explains the economic impact. This silver helped stabilize currency, financed industrial development, and influenced national politics. The Comstock silver helped fund the Union during the Civil War and shaped debates about monetary policy for decades. Water, lumber, and infrastructure. The Comstock required massive infrastructure that De Quille chronicles in detail. Two resources were essential, water and lumber. Water was scarce in the high desert. The mining operations required enormous quantities for steam power, ore processing, and simply keeping miners alive in the heat. Engineers constructed elaborate systems to pipe water from distant sources, sometimes dozens of miles away. These were major engineering projects involving tunnels, aqueducts, and piping systems. Lumber consumption was even more staggering. The mines consumed entire forests. Trees were cut in the Sierra Nevada, floated down rivers, and transported to Virginia City. The volume was almost incomprehensible. Some estimates suggest the Comstock consumed over 600 million board feet of lumber. This created an environmental disaster. The Sierra forests around Lake Tahoe were clear-cut. The landscape was transformed permanently. De Quille notes this destruction matter-of-factly. Environmental consciousness was minimal in that era, but his descriptions allow modern readers to understand the ecological cost. Transportation infrastructure was equally impressive. Railroads were built to bring in supplies and ship out ore and bullion. The Virginia and Truckee Railroad became famous for its engineering, winding through difficult mountain terrain to connect Virginia City with the transcontinental railroad system. The social world, culture, and vice De Quille paints a vivid picture of Virginia City's social life. Despite its remote location and mining camp origins, the city developed a surprisingly sophisticated culture. The Territorial Enterprise newspaper, where De Quille and Mark Twain worked, was respected regionally. The city had theaters presenting Shakespeare, opera, and popular entertainment. Lectures and concerts attracted audiences. Schools educated children. Churches served multiple denominations. Simultaneously, Virginia City was wild. Saloons and gambling halls operated around the clock. Prostitution was open and organized. Violence was common. Shootings, stabbings, and brawls were regular occurrences. The city combined high culture with raw frontier chaos. De Quille describes the various social strata and how they interacted. Miners and millionaires might drink in the same saloons, though at different ends. Racial tensions existed. Chinese workers particularly faced discrimination and violence, but the shared mining enterprise created some social mixing unusual for the era. Women's roles were complex. Respectable women were relatively rare and highly valued. Many women came as wives and managed to create family life despite harsh conditions. Other women worked as prostitutes or in other disreputable occupations. Some women became entrepreneurs, running boarding houses, laundries, or restaurants, accumulating significant wealth. The city's entertainment reflected its character. Boxing matches, horse races, and other sporting events attracted huge crowds and enormous gambling. Holidays were celebrated extravagantly. The 4th of July featured massive celebrations with parades, speeches, and fireworks. Christmas brought elaborate parties, despite the cold mountain winter. The decline, when the silver ran out. De Quille, writing in 1876, was chronicling the peak of the Comstock. He couldn't fully predict the decline, but he understood that ore bodies eventually exhaust. By the 1880s, after De Quille's book, production began declining. The richest ore bodies were mined out. Deeper mining became prohibitively expensive. The Bonanza Kings moved on to other ventures. Virginia City began to shrink. The decline wasn't immediate or total. Mining continued for decades, and occasional new discoveries temporarily revived the district. But the glory days were over. By 1900, Virginia City was a shadow of its former self. Buildings were abandoned, population dropped to a few thousand, and the city became a living ghost town. Today, Virginia City survives as a tourist attraction and small community, preserving its history. The mines are mostly closed, though some still operate on a small scale. The Comstock's legacy is visible in the wealth that built San Francisco. In the political influence of Nevada, which gained statehood largely due to Comstock wealth, and in American economic history, historical significance, the Comstock's impact. De Quille's book documents an event of national importance. The Comstock Lode's impact extended far beyond Nevada economic impact. The silver and gold produced, estimated at over $400 million in 19th century dollars, tens of billions today, was a significant portion of American precious metal production during the critical Civil War and Reconstruction periods. Political impact. Nevada achieved statehood in 1864, largely because the Union needed Comstock silver and wanted Nevada's electoral votes. The phrase "battle-born" on Nevada's flag refers to statehood during the Civil War. Technological impact. Comstock mining drove innovations in deep rock mining, ventilation, hoisting, and ore processing. Techniques developed there spread worldwide. Financial impact. The Comstock created modern mining stock speculation. San Francisco's stock exchange grew largely from Comstock trading. The boom and bust cycles of mining stocks influenced broader financial markets. Social impact. The Comstock demonstrated both the possibilities and costs of industrial capitalism. It created spectacular individual wealth while exacting terrible human costs from workers. This pattern would be repeated in other extractive industries. Literary and historical value. The Big Bonanza is valuable both as literature and historical document. De Quille writes engagingly, combining technical information with human stories. His first-hand observations provide details unavailable elsewhere. The book influenced later writers. Mark Twain drew on Comstock experiences for his own work. Mining literature and Western writing generally owe debts to De Quille's combination of factual reporting and narrative skill. For historians, the book is an essential primary source. De Quille witnessed events personally, interviewed key figures, and recorded details that would otherwise be lost. His descriptions of mining technology, social conditions, and daily life are invaluable for understanding the period. Dan De Quille. The author William Wright, writing as Dan De Quille, was uniquely positioned to tell this story. He arrived in Virginia City in 1861, witnessed the entire Bonanza era, knew all the major figures, and had access to the mines that few outsiders received. His relationship with Mark Twain, who worked at the Territorial Enterprise 1862-1864, influenced both writers. They shared a style mixing factual reporting with humor and tall tales. De Quille was actually the more experienced journalist, and Twain learned from him. De Quille lived in Virginia City for decades, maintaining his connection to the Comstock long after its glory days passed. He died in 1898, having documented one of American history's most extraordinary economic events. Themes and lessons. Several themes emerge from The Big Bonanza, Fortune and Chance. The Comstock story demonstrates the enormous role of luck in wealth creation. The difference between millionaire and pauper often came down to where someone chose to dig, when they bought or sold stock, or whether they were in the right place at the right moment. Technology and progress. The book showcases 19th century industrial technology at its most advanced. The Comstock pushed engineering limits, solving problems that seemed impossible. Human cost. Behind the wealth statistics were human beings, miners dying in accidents, workers suffering occupational diseases, families disrupted, and communities boom and bust cycles. Environmental impact. The Comstock showed both humanity's ability to transform nature and the ecological consequences of extraction. Social mobility. The Bonanza Kings demonstrated that spectacular wealth could be achieved by working-class immigrants. However, for every Mackay who became rich, thousands of miners remained poor despite their labor creating wealth for others. Conclusion. The Bonanza Legacy. The Big Bonanza tells the story of a unique moment in American history when a mountain in Nevada produced wealth beyond imagination, creating millionaires, building cities, and influencing national development. Dan De Quille's book preserves this history with detail and vitality. His combination of technical expertise, narrative skill, and first-hand knowledge created an irreplaceable historical record. The Comstock story resonates today. It's about the American dream and its costs. It's about technological innovation and environmental destruction. It's about spectacular wealth creation and the workers who made it possible while receiving a tiny fraction of the value they produced. Virginia City still stands, now a tourist destination preserving its colorful past. Visitors can tour some of the old mines, walk the historic streets, and imagine the era De Quille documented. The Comstock has become legend, romanticized in popular culture. But the Big Bonanza reminds us that behind the legend were real people. The miners dying underground, The bonanza kings making and losing fortunes, the families trying to build lives in a harsh landscape, the entrepreneurs and workers and gamblers and dreamers who converged on Mount Davidson seeking their share of the silver beneath. The Comstock Lode was, indeed, the big bonanza, the greatest silver strike in American history. Dan De Quille ensured that its story, in all its glory and tragedy, would not be forgotten. His book remains the essential chronicle of this extraordinary episode in American history.